Robert Dilenschneider, welcome back to the podcast.
John, it's just great to be with you, and thank you so much. You look
It
very
is a
much at home in Salt Lake City.
Oh, thank you. It's a real pleasure to have you with me again. You're joining us from Connecticut. I'm south of Salt Lake City, and today we're going to be talking about your forthcoming book, Character: Life Lessons in Courage, Integrity, and Leadership. And as we were talking in the pre-interview, I think there has never been a time more when we've needed character more than now. I mean, maybe that's an overstatement. There probably has been times before where we've needed character more, but we certainly need it now. We're perhaps at a crossroads, I would say, and it's just a vital time. Certainly, we need it. In society generally, we need it in our communities, we need it in our organizations. We live in a VUCA world, and things are changing around us constantly, and we just need leaders who have character, people who have the courage to speak up, people who have the integrity to live their values and to do what's right. And we need leaders who can do the hard things and lead their teams, their communities in a way that we can all be proud of. And that's hard. It's not always easy, especially if you have to buck the status quo and the systems that are causing harm to people around us. So this is what we'll be discussing today. As we get started, I wanted to share Robert's bio with everybody. Robert L. Dilenschneider is founder of the Dilenschneider Group, headquartered in New York and Chicago. The firm provides strategic advice and counsel to Fortune 500 companies and leading families and individuals around the world, with experience in fields ranging from mergers and acquisitions and crisis communications to marketing, government affairs, and international media. I could say a whole lot more about your background. You've done so many great, amazing things over your career. I'm going to pause there. Anything you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in to talk about your book?
John, I think the only thing I'd like to highlight is that uh, more than any time in my experience, and that's more than 40 years in this business, um, has the focus of character been more important. We have started at the very top. The campaign that was won by Donald Trump, he's now won it. We have Donald Trump in office doing things that people like and people don't like. And some of those things will require real character. Transmitting 2 million people from Gaza, for example, to some other part of the world, and the other parts of the world being unwilling to take these 2 million people is going to require a lot of character. Doing some of the things he's doing with eliminating parts of the federal government, the educational establishment, it's going to take a lot of character to deal with that. But that really devolves down to a very personal level at the basic parts of business and society. There's every opportunity today to do something wrong and to get away
Yeah.
with it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not good. And we can't rely totally on the police and on other organizations to stop this. We have to really ask ourselves if we should be doing these things, and we shouldn't be. So um, I just think the whole idea of character, leadership, integrity, courage, pretty important today.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you're right. You brought up, a political commentary there for a moment. And while this isn't a political podcast, certainly it's relevant and certainly, political leadership is a big part of everyone's lives, certainly here in the United States and other places around the world. Whether we're talking about politics, though, or we're talking about internal leadership within an organization, or we're talking about, community leadership, leadership within the home, regardless, character matters. You also highlight, that people have different views, people have different values, people have different um, worldviews, different frameworks of understanding what's happening. So with for example, with Donald Trump, people have completely different views on his leadership and these questions of courage, integrity, etc. We're not going to parse that out today, but what I do want to highlight and what we're going to discuss, hopefully, in a helpful way today is really just how important it is to live our values, how important it is to live with courage, to be willing to stand up, to be willing to speak out, to be willing to challenge the status quo. That takes courage. And I feel like we live in a world where most people, they want to put their heads down, they want to get by, and I get it. Like I in some ways don't blame them, but in other ways I'm like, come on, we gotta do what's right for those around us. And especially when harm is happening. If harm is happening to our family, we're going to speak up, right? If harm is happening to people in our community, sometimes it's easier to look the other way because it's not directly impacting us. If harm's happening to our direct team at work, sometimes it's easier for us to speak up because it's more direct. But if it's happening to other people that are a little bit more disconnected from us at work, somewhere else in the organization, maybe it's easier to kind of set it aside or to kind of put our heads in the sand a little bit and to think, oh, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to pay attention to that. The reality is, though, it does matter. What happens to one happens to all of us, and courage is important, and integrity is important. We need to live our values, and we need to stay consistent with those values. And we're going to have honest, well-meaning, well-intentioned individuals are going to have differences of opinion around different policy issues, around different, policies, practices, and procedures within organizations. That's one of the wonderful things about, having freedom of speech, having freedom of, having democracy, the opportunity for people to come together, to share ideas, to kind of hash those things out, because then you have, hopefully the best ideas float to the top, right? But you have to do it from a place of genuine good faith, and a place of where people can truly stand up for what they believe, and not just kind of cave to the systems and the powers that be, because we feel threatened or whatever the case may be. And again, I get it. I get why people, are inclined to cave, or they're inclined to not speak up. But now, perhaps more than ever, or more than ever in recent years or decades, it's really, really important.
It is really important. And one of the things that people do, and you mentioned it earlier, is when moments come up that are controversial, or moments come up where a decision has to be made and might be unpopular, they don't do it. And that's a problem. There's are many ways to speak out, reflect your point of view, say that this counts or this doesn't count, without jeopardizing your job or your well-being. And I think it's important for people to think that through. But virtually every day, everybody in this country, and I'll come back to that in a second, has a moment to really reflect character, or a moment to reflect their integrity, a moment to reflect their leadership, a moment to reflect their basic feeling about things. One of the great things about the United States, and it's different from the rest of the world really, is you can do that. And you can do that without fear of reprisal. If you try to do that in the Soviet Union, well, there is no more Soviet Union. If you try to do that in Russia, there could be reprisal. If you try to do it in North Korea, there would be reprisal. If you try to do it in the Middle East, the rulers who drive the Middle East, they're going to take action if they don't agree with what you're saying. Even in the most sophisticated governments of Western Europe, this happens. So one of the things we've got here, and we're lucky, is we've got a position that almost nobody else in the world enjoys. We can say what we want. We can say it as long and as hard as we want. And hopefully we will not be in any way compromised by doing that. But it's important to do that. And the most important thing is we continue to do it. The minute we stop doing it, we'll have a situation like is found in some of the other countries I've just mentioned. So it's really important to do that, in my view.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you've lived a long life, you've had a long career, you've worked with a variety of leaders across industries and a lot of different types of leadership roles. Um, what would you say are some of the reasons why uh, people don't have that courage or that integrity? Because, I mean, there are genuinely, shall I say, weak people who don't have those things, but most people are good, honest people who wake up in the morning wanting to do the best they can, right? And most people aren't nefarious. Most people don't wake up in the morning thinking about how they're going to hurt those around them. Like most people wake up in the morning wanting to go put their best foot forward, do the best they can, help those around them, right? Yet when when things get rough and tough and when you find yourself in ethical dilemmas or you find yourself in a hard situation, it becomes a rarity when people have that leadership courage. Why do you think that is?
I think at the end of the day, and again, this is really for the United States, uh, somebody looks within themselves and I say, uh, am I willing to create even the slightest risk of sacrifice when I need it? I need it for my family. I need it for my job. I need it for those around me. Am I willing to take a risk and speak out or do something that reflects a level of something I don't necessarily agree with? Why does that happen? It happens because people want to, frankly, protect themselves. I'm not saying everybody on your podcast should go out and complain or do the right thing or try to do the right thing. I'm saying character is probably pretty obvious to people that are listening to the podcast. They know what to do. You and I know what to do. The challenge is doing it, and that's not easy challenge to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. Whether, it's yeah, the integrity piece, being honest and true to ourselves. Sometimes there's some self-awareness issues, sometimes we lack self-awareness. But again, I'm going to start with the premise that most people um, know what's right. Like most people know what the right thing to do is.
I think that's
Um,
true.
and so if we start with that premise, and then most people have the desire to do the right thing, and I believe that's true. So if we start with those two components, then it really comes to, okay, what will it take? And you already identified that we live in a society where we have more safety and protections than many other societies in other parts of the world. So it takes less courage for us to speak up and to speak out than it would in many other societies around the world, right? And yet, you still don't. And yet, we still in our organizations, we may not stand up for that colleague or whatever. And because yes, there might, even though the risk might be small, it might be minuscule, we still aren't quite willing because maybe it'll have a small impact on our career, or maybe that next time that promotion comes around, we're afraid that maybe we'll put a bad taste in the mouth of the person making the decision, or what, name the thing, right? It could be anything. Um, and I get it. These are all realities that we have to face, and we have to think about our families, and we have to, do that calculus and balance those decisions. I'm not here to judge anyone in their particular decision making, um, but when it comes down to it, are we willing to stand up for those who don't have power, who don't have privilege, who are the disenfranchised, who are underserved, or who might be targeted in some way, who might have injustices served upon them, and if not us, then who? And that becomes the question. And I'm not delusional enough to think that I single-handedly am going to go about changing the world. I don't have that power. Um, I can't I can't make the difference for everybody, right? But I can make at least a small difference within my sphere of influence. I can make this at least a small difference for the people around me. And collectively, together, if we all raise our voice, we can all make a big collective difference, right? But it only works if we're all, having that courage. And yeah, that just often is lacking. And so, my hope is that in this moment of time, whether we're talking about volatility in the workplace, in the labor market, and in our businesses, or if we're talking about social issues, geopolitical stuff, whatever, that people will, take another look at themselves and see, like, what can you do? What are you comfortable doing? And then maybe nudge yourself to go a little bit out of your zone of comfort, a little bit into that area of discomfort. And I think you'll find that you can go into that area of discomfort a little bit more. Like, it's not as dangerous as maybe you might think it is. Like, it's not as hard to have courage as perhaps maybe you thought it was. And you can help and support and stand up for people around you. And with, you don't have to be like some amazing hero. You don't have to be like a Martin Luther King. You don't have to, like, you can do the simple little things each and every day and make a big difference and be someone who's known, has a reputation for integrity and courage, and who's going to do the right thing. And that matters. That really does matter.
Who would deny having that kind of a reputation? Very few people. I think, though, that there are a tremendous number of opportunities that come up virtually every day for
Yeah.
everybody, and they just don't speak out on it. And
Yeah.
one of the things that makes the United States what it is we have spoken out on it, and we have dealt with issues, and we're hopefully going to continue on that for some time. For sure, Donald Trump is going to give us plenty to speak about. There's no question about that. Joe Biden, at the end of his tenure, gave us a lot to speak about. I mean, frankly, the pardoning of all of those people, really incredible. But then here comes Trump, and he pardons everybody that on January the 6th did what they did. There's something wrong with this. And it overrides the system of justice we have in this country. And justice is really critical. It's critical to character, at least in my opinion. There are plenty of lessons of courage, of integrity, of leadership that can be learned. I try to reflect some of them in the book. And if those lessons are learned and actually carried out by the men and women who are watching the podcast, life will be better. And that's a really good thing. Will somebody watching this podcast take a risk? I hope so. And if they do, I hope that they'll do it because we had this discussion and because they feel it's important to stand up and do the right thing. So there's a lot of opportunity virtually every single day, every single hour of every day. There's opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, Robert, this has just been a really great conversation. I know we've just really scratched the surface, but that's why you have an amazing book that's being released. As we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, the Dilenschneider Group, where they can find your forthcoming book, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Well, people are more than happy to come to the website. And if they come to the website, they'll see plenty about the Dilenschneider Group. And I hope they do. And I hope they'll call if the spirit moves them. The book itself will be out in March. I expect it's going to have heavy promotion and advertising. So there'll be an opportunity to buy the book. It's a quick read. It's a fast read. I wrote it in chunks, so you don't have to read the whole book at one sitting. You can read 3 or 4 paragraphs and walk away with a good feeling about it. I think that's one of the big challenges of writing today. But they can get it that way. I think, again, I look at the most important things that are happening in the world today. And again, whether Trump or his adversary had won, things are going to have really important elements for everybody in this country. We have to speak out. We have to go the democratic way, do the right thing. It's absolutely critical. And it's never been more critical, in my opinion, than now. When we had the Bushes, when we had Obama, when we had Bill Clinton, it was less critical. It was there, but it was less critical. Today, it's really critical. And if we don't step out and do the right thing, we're going to pay for it. In Utah, where you're living, I think Mitt Romney lives there, doesn't he?
Yep.
I believe he does. Romney has an incredible background. His father had an incredible background. I think we study people like Mitt Romney and his dad. I think that would be a very positive thing to do. For people in the podcast or in New York, Illinois, California, Florida, I know you've got dozens, hundreds of people involved in this. There's an opportunity for them to speak out and do the right thing today. If you're checking out of your grocery store and the grocery clerk gives you the wrong number, if you're in your church and you don't agree with what your priest or your pastor says, if you're in your job and you're insulted, if these are all moments that somebody can speak out and say something and do it in a way that doesn't offend anybody, but which brings a better feeling for everybody that, well, we're doing that and we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Robert, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Robert can do for you. Check out the forthcoming book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.